Joined now by Ben Collins, who covers disinformation, extremism, and the internet for NBC News. Also with me is Ryan Ryland, who covers the Justice Department for NBC News. Ben, I want to start with you. You know, there was a part of me that wanted to talk about all the different times that, boy, Donald Trump's really done it now. All the times he's touched the electric fence. And, you know, you can go back to insulting John McCain. You know, those were the good old days that the RNC would put out a statement condemning Donald Trump for attacking John McCain. But he touches this electric fence so often, he probably is a conduit for electricity these days. What he did with QAnon in the last 48 hours, what kind of impact has it had?
Yeah, Chuck, I'd argue that his supporters like the electric fence. They are in favor of it, and they just want to use it on different people. That's really what's going on here. So what exactly happened with QAnon is he posted, like he's been doing on Truth Social recently, he posted not just a nod to QAnon, but a full-on, basically, endorsement of QAnon. It was a QAnon account that posted him with a QAnon lapel pin on that said, "The storm is coming, and where we go, one we go all." All of that is QAnon stuff. The storm is the end date for QAnon. It's their big apocalyptic end date where Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, all of the people in the deep state, they believe, are going to be rounded up and publicly executed after a trial or a military tribunal for treason.
Hey, Ben, so, I'm curious, though. They've moved, that date has changed quite a bit with these QAnon folks, right? We've passed it a few times, correct?
Oh, my God, yes. Yeah. The very first Q post. So Q is like this fake government insider, right? Very first Q post on 4chan back in the day, 2017, so that 48 hours later it was going to happen, that Hillary Clinton was going to be rounded up then. So it's all based on lies. It's all premised on lies. The difference is now, though, Donald Trump is not overtly has not been this overt about his support for this conspiracy theory until just this week, and it's a dangerous time for him to do that because people are more riled up than ever.
And Ben, I'm just when you say more riled up than ever, what does that mean? I mean, we've seen we saw what happened in Cincinnati. We've seen there was arrest at a Dairy Queen. Look, there have been threats against the judge that issued the special master. Folks will be quick to point out if I don't bring that up as well. It does feel like a little tinderboxy out there, but sometimes I wonder if we overrate the internet on that stuff.
Oh, yeah, of course. It's hard to know exactly where this is all headed. But this weekend, for example, there were two different QAnon-related crimes. One, a man tried to murder his whole family. He murdered his wife. He injured his daughter in a shooting. He killed his dog. And then his other daughter went to the internet to say that QAnon did this, that this man has always struggled with mental illness, but he has been obsessed with the idea that pedophiles are around the world and that QAnon is part of it. So that was one murder just from this weekend. And then there was that man at Dairy Queen who went to a Dairy Queen with a clown wig on and said he wanted to kill all Democrats as well. That was thankfully diffused. But that's just in the last few days. So that's what you're going to see constantly, are these like individual instances, especially when these groups lack organization. Before January 6th, they had plenty of organization. They knew exactly where to go. There were buses to bring them in. There was the top of the food chain was Donald Trump telling them to go there. Right now, they have no one place to go, and this is the kind of thing you're going to see.
Especially as the election gets closer and closer. Ryan Riley, let's talk about these folks that were convicted. 3 more January 6th defendants. What made this significant?
So this was a bench trial, and it was a Trump-appointed judge who was overseeing it. And, you know, one of the key charges here is that obstruction of justice charge, which actually, for 2 of the defendants, he acquitted them on, which is going to have major impacts because that's actually the charge that gives you the most criminal exposure. Although overall they were convicted of most of the charges. There was also a plea agreement yesterday reached for an individual who dragged a Trump fan who's wearing a Trump 2020 hat when he dragged an officer down the stairs and then later told officers that they were, quote, going to die tonight. So that's where sort of things stand in these cases. You know, you showed that video earlier of Trump speaking to individuals outside the D.C. jail there. I just want to run through who some of those folks are. So one of those individuals is the mother of Ashley Babbitt, who was shot when she jumped through the window going onto the floor of the house. Another individual there was a member of the Proud Boys. Another individual actually has been harassing officers during testimony at the D.C. federal courthouse. He's the larger man on the left in that video. So it's really just a lot of folks who he's speaking directly to who have really, you know, extremist views. That was an individual who's been barraging people in the elevator outside the courtroom, following them back to the DC from the courthouse to the Metropolitan Police Department. So some real sort of fringe figures who are out there who he's been speaking to here, Chuck.
And Ryan, how many more? What do we have left in these trials? How many more trials are around? I mean, this was a bench trial. How many more open cases are there with insurrectionists themselves? I understand
for 5 years out from 2021, because that's really what we're looking at here in terms of the trajectory. Right now, there have been over 850 people who are charged. About over 350 people have either pleaded guilty or been found guilty at trial. So that's, they've got that chunk of the people who they've actually charged, convicted. But remember, there are hundreds of people out there who have already been identified to the FBI who have not yet been arrested. So a very long path ahead here, Chuck.
And very quickly, the last probe that Bill Barr allowed to happen under his watch, the so-called Durham probe of the investigation of the investigators when it comes to Russia. That grand jury expired. What does that tell us here, Ryan?
It tells us that I think that's something that would have been put out of its misery a long time ago had it not been for how that would look politically. And, Merrick Garland wants to make sure that there's no political interference in something, so he's let that play out. But I think that the sign of it wrapping up without much to show in their way of results is indicative of what they were able to do there, Chuck.
All right. And we'll consistently wait for the Durham report for the next 10 or 15 years on a various QAnon website near you. Ben Collins and Ryan Riley, thank you both for getting us started here.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.